Hey, what's up? For this month's Pickup Lab, I want to introduce a brand new term in the pickup lexicon, and this term is what I call plausible proximity. Plausible proximity basically means being near girls on accident. And this is how a lot of guys who have very little game end up getting laid a lot by accident, or actually they end up getting laid rarely and occasionally by accident. What I want you to do is take this concept of plausible proximity, do it on purpose, and get laid a lot on purpose using it. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break down exactly what it is, why it works, and how you can utilize it. So the thing is, proximity obviously makes sense. You have to be near a girl in order to have her get to know your personality, in order to have her like sleep with you, that kind of stuff. Has to be proximate. The problem is, most guys, when they create proximity with a girl, they do it in a way which conveys an agenda, especially in cold approach. Right? It's very hard to walk up to a girl and be like, hey, I wanted to talk to you, but I don't have any outcome in mind. I just, I chose you out of these 30 people here, but it was random. There's no reason I chose you. There's clearly an agenda there. And the fact that there's an agenda says that there's a scenario where if you sleep with her, she gave in to you, you won and she lost. It also inherently sort of implies that you don't have abundance or that you needed to do that. So there is this sort of like negative factor, right? It lowers your value and it lowers her comfort at the same time, which has to be a bad thing in pickup. Okay? Contrast that to say like when you were in school, or if you like had an office that like had cute girls in it, that kind of stuff, where you meet people randomly over time. I mean, hell, before I even had game, when I was in middle school and high school, I had occasionally pretty cute girls who got crushes on me. I didn't know what the hell to do with it, and I never slept with any of them because I was too scared, but I would occasionally get girls that would have crushes on me just because I was around them doing my thing. And that's what I want to sort of like have you learn. All right. I have other friends who work in like the nightlife industry. They work in positions in nightlife where they don't even have a lot of status. Like they're like a bar back, or they're like a bouncer like inside the club or whatever, something like that. But they're around hot cocktail waitresses all the time. And so they have a social circle of hot cocktail waitresses, and they have a few of those that just happen to develop a crush on them through proximity and through getting to know their personality. Had they had to approach those girls on a cold approach, especially girls of that level of hotness, those girls probably would have like immediately had a shield up, been a little bit more apt to reject them, and they would have had a much harder time getting their personality across. Okay, so that's the idea of plausible proximity, right? You want to be around girls. I'll give you two quick examples. First is one of the hottest girls I ever slept with in Vegas. Is actually before I even lived there. One of my friends had guest lists. We had some extra spots, and it would help our relationship with like the promoters if we brought girls. We didn't actually even need to, but it would have helped. So I was tasked with going to find some girls to bring with us. So I went up to these girls like, hey, you want to come with us? We have extra spots. And the girl was like, oh, no, you're just like, this is your agenda. You need us to get in, whatever. I was like, no, actually fine. I'll find someone else. And so it was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'll come with you. And walked in with us, etc. So we had the process of walking into the club, going through the little bit of line and going down the stairs into the proper part of the club. And that period was a time where we were just getting to know each other with no agenda, right? We were just kind of stuck together, and it was only natural to talk and get to know each other, and it made sense, right? And the way I'd approached her, instead of it being, oh, I need something from you, or I think you're hot or whatever, it was this sort of like, oh, I'm offering you something, right? So that made it much easier. And then once we got inside, we already liked each other by the time we arrived, so we were like, hey, you know what? Before we part company, let's go grab a drink together. Grabbed a drink, and then ended up bouncing pretty soon after. All right. This is actually similar to a lot of times how guys like promoters and hosts get laid. Yes, there is an implied status with that, but a big part of it is they're just around girls a lot. They're around tons and tons of girls, and they don't get every girl. A lot of girls aren't turned on by the promoter host thing. Some girls are, but they're around enough that some of them will be kind of turned on, and a lot of them will be able to see the personality. And it just happens by accident, right? The promoter or the host didn't have to do a cold approach because he needed something from the girl. In fact, he did a cold approach offering something to the girl. And because of that, there's plausible proximity. They were just going about their job, but they happened to meet girls in the course of doing their job. Next example, personally, was I was attending an acting class in Hollywood, and I got there about 5 minutes early, and it was the first session of the class. There was a girl there that had been there like another 5 minutes earlier than me, and she was like stunning, like literally a 10. And I walked over, there was no one else there. We're both waiting for the same acting class. There's no reason for us not to talk. In fact, it would be weird if we didn't talk and get to know each other. So I got to walk up and talk to a 10, and I got to be immediately on like a level playing field. Right? I didn't have to deal with any of the bitch shield, any of the weirdness, and she opened right up to me, and everything went really, really easily. And actually, as I walked over, I'm not religious, but I like looked up, I'm like, thank you, I appreciate this, right? Because it's just so lucky to have happened that way. All right, so anytime that you can create these situations where you're meeting girls in the course of your life and in the course of doing something, but you also have the opportunity to talk, interact, get to know them, that's ideal. And that's how you're gonna meet some of the hottest girls in some of the best ways and contexts where you can establish value very, very easily. So what am I suggesting you do with this information? Well, basically there's 3 things you can do. First is structure your life as much as you reasonably can in a way that you do have hot girls in it. Some people go extreme with this. Some guys become club promoters or hosts or that kind of stuff, or they get into nightlife, those kind of things. Some people become photographers for this reason, right? What you can do at a bare minimum is leave the house more often, right? If you sit around in your house or your cubicle and don't expose yourself to the world very often, the more times you go out and just have social connections, go to the same restaurant and make friends there, those kind of things, that's gonna create more situations where you're gonna accidentally meet girls in a good context, except by adjusting your life, you're now doing it on purpose. Other thing you can do, join sports or hobbies that you like to have hot girls in them. For example, if you like yoga at all, maybe go join a yoga class, right? Why not? If it's something that you actually enjoy for its own sake, do it with girls around. You go 3 or 4 times, say hi and bye to the girls, they get to know your personality by accident because you're there to do yoga, and now all of a sudden you're there in a really good context, okay? So what I'm suggesting is create ways that you can have a lifestyle that you still like. Don't adjust who you are for this, but create ways within your lifestyle that you're around hotter girls more often in a good context. So that's number 1. Second thing you can do, take advantage of your opportunities when they arise. Another example from my own life. I was on a plane once and I got seated next to these 2 really hot girls, and I was actually exhausted. I had been up all night the night before, but when I did talk to them a little bit, I flirted with them, sort of like conveyed, we were going to Vegas, which was where I lived. I conveyed I kind of knew the city better than they did, and like I might know some places they could go. And then I was kind of aloof and, I wanted to sleep a little bit. I went and talked to my assistant during part of the flight. And so they ended up being intrigued, thinking I had value, and they ended up closing me. And then that girl ended up calling me later that night to hang out when her friend had passed out at a day party. So it was a pretty ideal situation. Right, that's plausible proximity. A lot of guys wouldn't have taken advantage of it though, right? A lot of guys would have sat next to that hot girl and they would have been like, oh, okay, I'm nervous, I won't do anything. Or they would have made like a little bit of small talk. Or maybe another thing they would have done badly is they would have, in that plausible proximity circumstance, they would have actually hit on her in the exact same way they would have on a cold approach. Right? That's another problem, right? Don't turn this unique positive opportunity into a cold approach where you become super tryhard, all right? So when you have that circumstance where the girl is gonna be in your presence by accident, right? She's gonna be there, you have a window of time with her, understand that's a fundamentally different concept and you need to game it as though you have more value. You can game it a lot more easily and work as though that's to your advantage. So take advantage of those situations when they arrive and don't turn them into implausible proximity. Don't turn it into like, I have an agenda pickup, right? Make sure that stays away when it's at all possible. Third and final thing you can do, when you do pick up, you can introduce elements of plausible proximity even though there is an inherent agenda and it is inherently implausible. One great example of this is the, the false time constraint. False time constraint is where you say, I gotta get going in a second, I got my friends, but anyway, let's talk, right? The fact that you convey you're there to see your friends, you have to leave pretty quickly, that conveys a total lack of agenda, total non-neediness. It makes them more comfortable, and it makes it all seem like it just happened by accident a little more. So it makes it easier for them to accept in their head. It makes it feel a lot more like a win to them, makes them more comfortable with you, and increases your value all at once. Okay, and think of it from their experience. Think of it from their experience. If they were to tell this story to their friends, do they want to tell the story, hey, this needy guy with an agenda came up to me and picked me up and wanted to fuck me, and then I fucked him? Or do they want to say, oh yeah, I just bumped into this guy randomly, like one thing led to another, our eyes met, it was a really cool vibe. I actually didn't know if he liked me at first, but like I kind of hit on him a little bit, and I won him over and then we had sex. In a plausible proximity circumstance, you can actually have all those positive things happen. When there's an agenda, you can't. When there's an agenda, at best, you can get her to give in to having sex with you. But when there's plausible proximity, you can get her to truly chase you, right? And so even on a cold approach, you may not be able to establish it right away because there inherently is some agenda in the approach itself. But over time, the more elements of that plausibility that you can add, that more elements of it just happened you can add into the pickup, the better it's all gonna work out for you. All right, so that's what you wanna create. The ideal scenario for pickup should not look or feel like pickup. It should look and feel like it just happened. We just met each other. We were on the same social level and it just made sense. It just worked out. Remember that in pickup, you always want to create a situation where it's a win for her to sleep with you rather than a loss. And plausible proximity does that for you tremendously.